3 weeks ago, tons of videos told you the Sony WF-1000XM6 were the new kings of audio. The hype train was insane, but now the dust has settled. The honeymoon phase is over, and after using these as my daily driver since before launch, ignoring the spec sheets and the marketing fluff, I found some things that need mentioning. So, is the best noise canceling in the world actually worth $300 once the excitement wears off? Or should you stick with your AirPods Pro? Let's get into the real review. So first, let's talk battery life. So Sony was claiming 8 hours of noise cancellation on and 24 hours total with the charging case. Now, in my own personal testing with LDAC on and volume around that 60 to 75% mark, I managed to get right around 6 to 6.5 hours-ish of battery life. Now, competitors like what you're getting out of the Technics AZ100, they're pushing 10 plus hours. So for a 2026 flagship, staying sort of stagnant as far as that battery life is concerned is a little bit of a bummer. I gotta say that right up front. Now, when it comes to charging and water resistance, so quick charge is decent. 3 minutes gets you an additional 60 minutes of play if you've run them all the way down. But we do have wireless charging available on here as well as USB-C. But the wireless charging speeds still feel a little bit slow compared to like MagSafe on a set of AirPods Pro. Now, as far as water resistance, they are still IPX4, which is fine for the gym if you're going to sweat, anything like that. But you definitely don't want to drop them in the sink, the tub, and for sure, don't take the XM6 as swimming. 100% do not do that. So now let's talk about the design and the comfort. So the XM6, they're definitely an upgrade. They are roughly, I would say 10-ish% smaller than the Sony XM5s. And this matters because they sit much deeper inside of your ear. They pretty much can sit flush. So wind noise is significantly reduced because they just don't stick out so much. And that's great. That's a really good thing. That actually helps with noise cancellation. It helps with transparency mode as well. So this is something that was a problem with some of the larger like Bose or some of the other earbuds on the market, including some of Sony's own models. Now, when it comes to the ear tips, so Sony is still sticking with the polyurethane foam. It's like a hybrid kind of a tip, but it's got memory foam at its core. And this creates an insane seal for active noise cancellation. But if you have sensitive ears, this can create ear pressure and heat. So for me, they got a little bit itchy around that 30-minute mark, and that ear pressure definitely starts to build up for me. So that's still something that I don't like. But if you want a pro tip from me, if you don't like foam, buy third-party silicone tips like Spinfit Omni or even the Spinfit Neo. But just keep in mind that your noise cancellation performance will drop maybe around 10%-ish. I don't have the exact math on that. But you will notice a slight drop in your ANC. But I personally prefer using Spinfit tips with mine because the trade-off for slightly weaker ANC performance is the trade-off is worth it for me because the improvement in comfort as well as bass response that's so worth it for me personally. So that's a trade-off you have to come to for your own. If you're cool with the memory foam, stick with it. You're good to go. But if ear pressure is the issue like it can be for me, then trying out one of these silicone tip options might be the way to go for you as well. So now that's going to bring us over to sound quality. I think the biggest win here versus the XM5 out of the box is going to be clarity in the sound. So that sort of more darker, more muffled sound of the XM5 is gone. The XM6's sound more open and then a bit more airy out of the box. Now, when we're talking about bass, the stock bass is heavy and can sound sometimes bloated or muddy on tracks like The Weeknd's Blinding Lights, right? So the way I would fix this, go to the app, go to the equalizer, go to custom. Now pause the video here so you can take a screenshot and try my EQ settings for yourself. The bloat pretty much vanishes and you get a tight, much faster punch with that bass, and it hits harder than the bass that I'm getting out of my AirPods Pro 3 without drowning out the vocals, which is most important. Now, moving over to the mid-range and vocals. So vocals are pulled forward. Songs like Baby Powder by Genevieve sound textured, right? They sound like you're actually hearing her singing inside of your head. And that's a little bit different compared to like the smoother, flatter, more technical approach that Technics took with the AZ100. The Technics aren't bad by any means, don't get me wrong, and they respond well to EQ, but the XM6, they simply sound more bouncy, more engaging in my personal opinion versus the more technical or more neutral sound that we got out of the Technics AZ100. Now that's going to bring us over to treble, and now for treble, there's a lot of high energy here, right? It can border on sharp and sibilant at high volumes, but it gives you that detail, right? Like hearing, a singer's lips open, right? Like stuff like that. At first I was kind of wowed by this extra clarity. I was kind of, I like that extra treble energy personally. But honestly, after a few weeks of listening, for a few hours a day, that sharpness, it can definitely get a little fatiguing. So sometimes it's fun, it can be fun for like a quick 30-minute commute or like a short 15-minute walk or something. But when it's like a longer work session, when I'm here at my desk for like 3 or 4 hours, that's when I kind of find myself reaching for a different set of earbuds. Like I might pick up the Technics just because it's more neutral, a little bit more laid back, and I can have them in my ears for a longer period of time. So, but if it is too harsh for you, then one of the things you can do is you go back into the EQ and you can dial the 4K, the 8K, and the 16K, those sliders, you can dial those back a bit to suit to your taste. Now you have to do this individually. I can't give you an exact number. You have to kind of adjust them to see where you like that sound and then kind of go from there. But for me, in my opinion, these are the most lively earbuds in their class based on all the ones that I have that are at this price point. And for this specific comparison, I'm comparing them against the AirPods Pro 3 and the Technics AZ100. These are not neutral. They're more fun. They're more bouncy. They're more dynamic, but in a really good way. That's my opinion here. Now let's move on to the ANC here and the transparency mode. Now the active noise cancellation, as we expected from Sony, S tier, the new king, it's excellent. People have told this to you already. It is what it is. It's really, really freaking good. Easily the best in class in my testing against both the AirPods Pro 3 and the Technics AZ100. The XM6 easily reduced both low and higher frequency noises with ease in my testing. So low sounds like fan motors, car engines, AC units, refrigeration units, they simply get just deleted. They get completely erased. So definitely top tier performance as expected from Sony. I didn't think they could make it better. They actually did. Now, again, this is what using their memory foam ear tips. If you do switch out to the silicone ear tips, you're going to get a little bit of reduction in that noise cancellation performance. But even so, even with that little bit of reduction, they're still better than like 99% of the market, which is wild. Now, when it comes to transparency mode, this is much more natural than the XM5s. There isn't as much like of that robotic hiss noise that would come through. The AirPods Pro 3 is still going to be what most of us who review earbuds are going to call the gold standard, right? Sounds like you're wearing almost nothing. Sony is, I would say, like 95, 96, 97% of the way there, but you still know you're wearing microphones. So that's one thing you definitely want to keep in mind. So it's still really good. It's just not the best at that. So it's the king of ANC, not the king of transparency, but it's still going to be considered like high level, top level market transparency mode from Sony for sure. So now let's go ahead and jump into some quick mic quality tests. So now the tech that's involved here with Sony, we got bone conduction sensors. There's heavy AI noise reduction. So I'm going to run the test against with the AirPods 3 as well as with the Technics AZ100, so we can see how these three sort of fare up against each other, both in a semi-quiet room and with some noise added into it. So let's jump into those tests really quick. All right, and here we have the microphone test for the Sony WF-1000XM6 earbuds. So testing, 1, 2, 3. As you can see, I'm indoors in a semi-quiet room. So testing, 1, 2, 3. All right, and here we have the microphone sample for the Technics AZ100. So testing, 1, 2, 3. As you can see, once again, I'm indoors in a semi-quiet room. So testing, 1, 2, 3. All right, and here we have the microphone sample for the Apple AirPods Pro 3. So testing, 1, 2, 3. As you can see, once again, I am indoors in a semi-quiet room. So testing, 1, 2, 3. And here we have the Sony WF-1000XM6 in a simulated crowd noise environment. So something like a busy bar, a crowded restaurant, or something along those lines. So testing, 1, 2, 3. And here we have the Technics AZ100 in a simulated crowd noise environment. So something like a busy bar, a crowded restaurant, or something along those lines. So testing, 1, 2, 3. And here we have the Apple AirPods Pro 3 in a simulated crowd noise environment. So something like a busy bar, a crowded restaurant, or something along those lines. So testing, 1, 2, 3. So now that we got that out of the way, that's going to bring us over to any deal breakers with the Sony WF-1000XM6, right? Reasons that you may return them, if anything. So number one is going to be what I would call kind of the gross factor. On day one, the foam tips, they felt like a perfect seal, but after a couple weeks, they're starting to lose that rebound elasticity. They're getting softer, and frankly, they're getting a little grimy. Now, mind you, I do clean my ears, but we're all human beings. And memory foam, this is one of the things that it is known for, is that it just gets like grody. I'm not a fan of that, right? This is why, again, this is why I prefer silicone ear tips. So again, I'm going to recommend that if that's an issue for you. And I'll even put a link to those tips that I'm using. I'll put a link to that in the video description as well. Now, secondly, the missing flagship features. There's no Find My speaker, right? You lose the case in a couch, good luck, right? AirPods have this, right? There's also no LE audio, no Auracast. Now, launching a 2026 flagship without full next-gen Bluetooth support is a miss, in my opinion, coming from Sony. Third, multipoint. Yes, we do have multipoint, but the Technics AZ100, they support 3-device multipoint. So Sony is still kind of stuck at 2. So it would be cool to see them kind of step up to the latest and greatest of what's available on the market. I'd love to see that from Sony, from a leader like them. Third, there's a bit of gaming latency here. So there is still some noticeable lag in competitive shooters like Call of Duty Mobile. Listen, it's going to be fine if you're just watching video or for like casual gamers, but if you're somebody who's a bit more competitive with your mobile gaming, then probably not going to be a good choice for you, unfortunately. And then fourth, there's a bit like the smaller shell on these leads to some ghost touches, right? Because there's almost nowhere to grab. So if you decide to adjust the fit, you're often going to pause your music or hang up on a call accidentally, or which has happened to me. So this is where you kind of have to be careful with it. Also, if you decide to sleep in them, because you can sleep in these earbuds, but if you put your hands under your head like this, you're going to trigger that. So that's something just to kind of keep in mind there. So now that's going to bring us over to the final verdict. 3 to 5 weeks later, do I regret switching away from my regular rotation of earbuds, like the AirPods Pro 3, the Status Audio Pro X, all of those involved? If you bought into the hype thinking that the Sony XM6 were perfect, you might be disappointed by the battery life and the cheap feeling case. But if you look past the marketing, they are still the kings of silence here. So my advice, the hype was mostly real, but the price is the problem. So in my opinion, and a lot of the people who've been around in my community know this, because I've said this so many times, if you can wait a month or more for the inevitable Sony discounts, probably drop to something like $250, maybe something like that, buy them then. At $300, I would probably still go with, I think the AirPods Pro are still the safer bet for longevity if we're going to be paying that much. So again, for Sony, while they are excellent, and if you need the latest and greatest and the strongest ANC, by all means, knock yourself out. It's a great purchase. But I'm always going to say this, wait for discounts, because if you don't need them right now, just hold off, put them in your cart, save them for later, something like that. Set alerts so that you get, whenever there's a discount, you get an alert for it. That's what I do. And buy them then when you can get them at a bit of a price drop. Personally, those are my thoughts. Now, if you want to check out what I think are some great open ear options that don't go in your ear, check out the video that I'm gonna leave for you right up here on the screen. With that said, my name is JEFE, and I'm out. Peace.